Hello, and thanks for tuning in. Today's occult reading is going back to Zolar's Encyclopedia of Forbidden Knowledge, published in 1970. We're going back into this book because I want to make a series of videos that focuses on what is talked about in the occult as the eighth sphere, which is sometimes synonymous with hell in anthroposophy. So Zolar has a lot to say about what is referred to as the dark satellite, the eighth sphere, and the other book that I have that talks about the eighth sphere is the Picatrix. The Picatrix talks about the eighth sphere quite a lot. In fact, the Picatrix talks about how to locate the eighth sphere in the celestial heavens. So that's interesting. We're going to get into that. And the other thing that's interesting about this idea of the eighth sphere is some folks believe that it's the magnetic field of the earth, which is basically like a strong magnetic current that holds low vibrational dark spirits that are the earthliest spirits that any human being is gonna have the easiest time conjuring up. So with the eighth sphere, the imagery that to keep in mind would be what we think of with, I guess you could say, Hollywood Satanism. Black and red candles, pentagrams of blood, stuff. I mean, those types of things apparently do trigger spirits from the eighth sphere, so to speak. This dark satellite, they say. All right, so when it comes to stuff like that and why maybe that's our, even though people like Julius Evola will say that those forms of spirituality, or I guess you could say modern Satanism, are just fraudulent, that they're just not legitimate forms of occultism. And I believe that as well. But let's go deep in here and see what sort of connections we can find to what we're already familiar with and what authors like Zolar have to say about things like the eighth sphere and the dark satellite. All right, so chapter 7, here we go. The dark satellite. When we look about us with the physical senses, nature seems to be in continual warfare with herself. In fact, it seems utterly impossible to find anything not in deadly conflict with something else. Observing this, mankind has unconsciously, from time immemorial, formulated the idea of two great powers, the good and the evil. From this idea, the grand dogma of all theology, God, quote unquote, and the devil, quote unquote, sprang into existence. It soon became the chief cornerstone of every sacerdotalism which the world has witnessed. While there is some basic truth in this idea, as in every popular conception, it has its false premises as well. Mankind as a whole cannot formulate any idea which is wholly and absolutely false in every detail. Yet owing to the fact that man, while existing upon the material plane, cannot grasp the divine idea of absolute truth, nor realize the logical absurdity of more than one absolute. He, therefore, utterly fails to comprehend how that which is relative evil can be harmonized into an absolute good. To the majority of mankind, this mighty problem of good and evil is still unsolved, but a very few indeed, of the profoundly learned students of occult lore have arrived at a true conception of the subject. Countless legends and allegories have evolved during the lapse of the ages. These embody the facts and the processes connected with this great arcane mystery. But the metaphysics of these legends has never been revealed to the uninitiated. Especially this is the case in regard to the dark satellite. However, the time has now come when certain facts in regard to this orb of evil may be given to the world for the very first time. In the first place, certain misconceptions in regard to the dark orb need to be corrected. Many earnest students have thought it to be the lost orb of the Grecian mysteries. This would make it similar to the Egyptian conception of the spiritual quote-unquote fall. But there is, in fact, no connection between the two at all. Another misconception has regarded the moon as an identical with the dark orb. Many assert, in a very mysterious manner, the moon is not only the eighth sphere or the orb of death and dissolution, but is the dustbin of the universe, quote-unquote. This conception is radically false as regards to the moon. It approaches the realm of truth in some respects regarding the nature of the mysterious dark satellite itself. With these brief remarks, it now is possible to point out a perfectly correct conception of what this dark satellite is, and also to understand its fearful importance at the present crisis in the world's history. During the golden and silver ages of our Earth's evolution, this dark satellite was in the aphelion of its orbit, and then its influence was scarcely felt. Its influence then was seen and recognized in its true relation of animal force and undeveloped good. As a factor of evil, it was still imperceptible. But during the copper and iron ages, the orb gradually approached the earth, and its dark shadows became more and more bewildering and more potent until the year 1881. Then it passed its grand perihelion point. It is now slowly but surely receding, and although the clouds are not completely lifted from the mental horizon, the fact is the fearful conflict which occurred at the perihelion is over. Yet the confusion and chaos of today seem more widespread and more rampant than ever before in the world's history. Still, it is past its darkest portion of the orb in its culminating point. As it is often darkest just before the break of day, so even now the dawn of a brighter morn is at hand. Then the faithful, resolute, truth seeker shall be able to solve for himself this awful problem of good and evil. Therefore, we must be sustained by the knowledge of the ultimate victory of order and equilibrium over chaos and opposing forces. Even though enveloped in the darkness of battle and involved in the vortices of the defeated legions of air, let us turn our attention more closely to the satellite itself. It has been such a disturbing factor to our planet's mental equilibrium, we must consider it with special reverence. The implication and responsibility forced upon every soul seeking light and immortality are very great at present. In the first place, this orb possesses a complete organization of its own and is governed by well-defined laws. The nature of these laws may be known only too well by patiently observing the merciless instincts of the lower animal nature manifested in man. There, the moral consciousness is absolutely wanting. Throughout the whole sphere are numerous races of spiritual beings, many of them possessing the highest forms of cunning and intelligence possible on the animal plane. It is these beings who are neither elementals nor elementaries, but who are the producers of the greatest portion of the suffering and misery which afflicts all humanity. From within the dark center of the astral realms of these beings, the spirit of lies, murder, fraud, and religious imposture are first formulated. It is then projected to the human fraternity as a means of its continued existence. From these human centers, it is reformulated to suit the spirit and temper of the times. Then its psychological influence is projected into the mental world of the human race. Its silent, subtle influx poisons the dimensional spaces which constitute the magnetic planes of all human life. The unseen occult current penetrates the innermost recesses of the human mind and possesses the soul to such an extent that deep down in the heart of man there is an evil. No matter how pure and disinterested one may appear, there lurks the slimy reptile of selfishness inside the soul. It is there even when he least suspects it. It is this grim monster which each aspirant to occult truth seeks to conquer. When this Goliath of the soul is struck dead by the smooth white pebble of the spirit, the ordeal is over. It is slung with the neophyte's full will, and the crown of immortality won. Quote unquote, to the victor belong the spoils. It is the dark satellite which formulates the spirit of lies, murder, and frauds, and this was well known to the initiates of the greater Hermetic mysteries. We find the idea very clearly defined in the mystical languages of the ancients. The following extract from one of the supposed lost magical works of Hermes Trismegistus shows us this clearly. He was speaking of the magical rulers of the dark satellite as they sit in council, creating all delusions when he wrote, quote, so they called forth a form from the deep, dark abyss to embody their evil desires. Obedient it came from the realm of the dead, arrayed in its magic attire. As it passed over to the earth, the fair flowers fell dead from its breath of poisonous fire, unquote. Indeed, so thoroughly has this poisonous fire of self-interest permeated the world, the fair flowers of disinterestedness are an almost entirely extinct species. Should the real state of unselfish unworldliness of the true mystic become known, he would either be regarded with pity as a non-compos mentis, or else looked upon with suspicion as acting from motives much more subtle than those which govern the ordinary mortal. The manner in which this dark magnetic energy is projected from the satellite to the earth is inversive. The rulers and magical hierophants make use of this inversive force to distort and corrupt the truth in every form as it struggles to become manifest upon the earth. The powers and influences attributed to certain races of the astrals belong in reality to the rulers and principalities of the dark satellite. They mercilessly distort every arcane truth into theological dogma of partial error, thus causing it to assume to the human mind the delusive form of the externals of truth and logic. But the delusive form is, after all, only a very flimsy sophistry when subjected to the keen searching eye of the soul. Consequently, it is always those who are half informed of nature's mysteries who fall into the snare. Herein is seen the occult truth in the old proverb, quote, a little learning is a dangerous thing, unquote. Just as the dark satellite was at its perihelion, these inversive brethren achieved the greatest theological and metaphysical success by the relaunching forth throughout the world of the doctrines of reincarnation, karma, and disembodied shells. These were formulated and taught by the decaying priesthoods of the dreamy Orient. Viewed in its true light, this gigantic movement of the inversive brethren was aimed as a death blow to the rapidly spreading spiritualism of the Occident. Such a movement, however, was doomed to ultimate failure, as there were certain absolute truths connected with this spiritualism. This truth was there notwithstanding the ignorance of its expounders and the many errors and gross impostures. These truths were neither to be suppressed by inversive magic nor smothered by any Oriental theory. These truths were well expressed in the book Excerpt, which stated, God is the matter and form of the universe. Everything exists in him. He is at the bottom of all the things and beings which carry the symbols of his intelligence. The whole, God and the universe, is a perfect unity. The uniting bond in creation are the 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet and the first 10 numbers expressed by the first 10 letters. These two types of signs are called the 32 marvelous ways of wisdom upon which God has founded his name. They are identified with thought rendered visible, and they are superior to bodies and substances. God's breath is in the Hebrew letters. They are equally of man and of God. The 10 numbers are the essential form of all that is. The number 10 is the basis of the world plan. Through them, intelligence perceives the world's existence and the divine action. These numbers are called the Sephirot. Their names are Kether, crown, the ideal principle of all entities, in which itself embraces all of the beings. Chokmah, wisdom, the principle of all life. Binah, intelligence, the principles of everything that is understanding. Hesed, goodness, the model of all grace. Gevorah, power, the principle of the distribution of reward or punishment. Tiferet, glory, the principle toward which converges all that is beautiful and perfect. Netzach, victory, to which conforms the permanent and the lasting. Hod, honor, the principle of all that flows down to interior beings. Malkut, kingdom, the link, which transmit all things from the superior to the inferior, and which helps the inferior assimilate itself to the superior. At this point, the question naturally arises, of what personal or selfish benefit is the propagation of error in the inhabitants of the dark satellite? The answer is simply this: it furnishes them with the means of prolonging their external existence while on Earth. It also supplies them with an additional lease of life in the world to come, as will be made manifest from hermetic laws of death as given below. According to these laws, death is not what is known as physical dissolution, but is a failure on the part of the human being to polarize the atoms which constitute the soul and thus realize immortality. It is a falling from human to the animal plane, where conscious existence may be prolonged indefinitely. The laws of death. Hermes Trismegistus. 1. As it is below, so it is above. As on the earth, so in the sky. 2. There are two states of being. One is mortal, the other immortal. 3. That which is mortal is dissolvable, and dissolvable bodies pass away like a mist in the morning. 4. An immortal body is an essence which is eternal and incorruptible. 5. The twain, the mortal and the immortal, cannot exist together forever, but each returneth to the place from whence it came. 6. The mortal body is sensible, but the immortal is reasonable. 7. The former contains nothing that is perfect, the latter nothing that is imperfect. For the one is the essence of the spirit, the other the essence of matter, and man, the microcosm, holds the balance of the twain. 8. And there is a fierce warfare for the victory between the upper and lower, as they both desire to obtain the body as their prize. For the state of man is envied by the lower and glorified as a noble state by the higher. 9. As the man inclines towards the lower nature, which is mortal, he thereby aids the lower imperfect powers to oppose the higher, which is immortal, and must suffer the pains of slavery for his disobedience to the workman, his maker. But if he inclines to the higher, then he is truly wise and blessed. 10. Should man, after being attracted by the vanities of the world, and then after obtaining a knowledge of the things that really are, return to the vanities of the world, he will be punished with torments and fire in the darkest states of disembodied souls. 11. Should a man, after knowing the things that are, become rebellious of restraint to that part which is immortal, and return to the vanities of the world, the higher essence will straightway depart from him, and he will become the slave of the lower essence, which will seize upon him and drive him all sorts of wicked arts and evil ways. 12. When man has thus impiously disobeyed nature and turned his face away from that which is immortal, behold, he is then disinherited from his birthright, and is no longer counted among the children of nature, because he has become an evil, perverse thing, possessing only those things which are mortal, and he is punished with death. 13. And so death is meted out to all those who rebel against nature impiously, because they know the things that are. But to those foolish souls who are ignorant, and who have not knowingly rejected nature, behold, they are purified after much suffering, and are sent to the world again. The teachings in the above laws are so clear, so simple, and so divinely just, that to attempt in any way to explain or annotate them would only sow the first seeds of error and misunderstanding. We will therefore leave them with the reader as they are, pure and free from the mental bias of any mortal being. Man alone possesses the elements of both life and death. The laws of life have been fully elucidated, and the soul which imperfectly obeys them, quote, after it has been purified by much suffering, unquote, ultimately reap the reward of eternal conscious existence. Consequently, the great majority of those souls who are really human beings will inherit immortality as a natural consequence of their humanity. But there are exceptions, which is, though few in number, require special notice. These exceptions may, for the sake of convenience, be divided into 3 distinct classes. The first and most numerous consists of imperfectly organized, sensitive, weak-natured individuals with little or no mental bias, but who possess strong mediumistic magnetisms. Individuals of this class, though perfectly human to begin with, soon lose the actual control of the external organism, and in consequence, the body becomes the obedient instrument for any and every class of disembodied earth-bound spirits. But what is still worse, it may become the slave of some vicious elementary. In this case, there was no real or true individuality. Therefore, no one can assert truthfully he was actually acquainted with the true personage. The real soul had departed in the very early infancy of the organism's physical existence. Just how or when or where, none of the trained seer can tell. In every individual case, the astral causes which produce the soul's abortion widely differ. The second class are those who fall victims to premeditated obsession, and are by no means so numerous as the first class. In this case, the organism is generally very fine insofar as the magnetic temperament is concerned, but the soul is utterly wanting in spiritual volition or will. The magnetic polarity of their soul is of such a nature, the spiritual will of the soul is almost powerless to act. The absence of this essential element of human life may be the result of the mental condition of the mother during her pregnancy, or of a mental coma of both parents at the moment of conception. This mental coma externalizes itself in the offspring as a lack of vim, verve, and fire. Hence, we often see this condition manifested in the children of kings, noblemen, and those from parents of great wealth. These people have the means to pander to and to gratify a fashionable, sentimental lassitude. In addition to this lack of spiritual volition, the magnetic constitution is always strongly mediumistic. Such an individual, if left quite free from the control of others, would be naturally good, highly sensitive, and in the true sense of spiritual parlance, a quote-unquote spirit medium. Such a person would be inspirational, physical, or clairvoyant, according to the peculiar magnetic grade. This is why they often fall victim of premeditated obsession. When such an obsession transpires, it is generally found some potent external mind. That of an evil sorceress or black magician requires the organism for the purpose of prolonging their own personal world existence. When a suitable mediumistic body is found, they bring the whole of their powerful magnetic will to bear upon the almost willless brain of their victim. Slowly but surely, they eject the rightful occupant, and then, by virtue of their occult powers and magic arts, inhabit the organism themselves. The near friends and relatives of the victim are often surprised at the remarkable change which they notice has taken place in the temperament and the disposition of their friend. They seldom, if ever, suspect the terrible truth which such a change implies. They can never be brought to fully understand the individual moving among them, as usual, has nothing whatever in common with their silently departed recent friend. The third and the least in number of these classes includes those who are born into the world under strangely conflicting conditions. Possessing all the essential elements of manhood, they also possess a powerful current of the most potent and concentrated form of selfishness and pride. In addition to this undesirable acquisition, they express the highest form of intellect combined with a powerful will and mediumistic temperament. These dominating conditions predispose them to the study of psychology and occultism, hence they fall an easy prey to the members of the black magic and their inversive astral brethren. Their selfishness, combined with their unbounded ambition and desire for power, precipitate them headlong into the most frightful practices, where, surrounded by the infernal rites of their diabolical seducers, they become helpless to the very powers they sought to control. Henceforth, they are lost. As the Hermetic law states, they are punished with death, quote unquote. They know it and consequently are compelled, for their own safety, to remain faithful to the order which entrapped them. Their only motto is self. Their only desire is to live, and this they will do at any cost. For their own lives, they would sacrifice the entire balance of creation, if such a thing were possible. Death to them is death in reality. In the first and second classes of so-called lost souls, the true individual does not become lost. He is the foolish, ignorant soul. He simply loses his physical organism. This personality, along with the animal and astral portion of it, becomes a lifeless shadow at death, and slowly disintegrates within the magnetic spaces of the astral light. It is a misty form incapable of personating its original owner, or of being galvanized into temporary life, quote unquote. While the counterfeiting, obsessing forces, after running the cycle of the magnetic existence within the electrovital spaces of the planet, become attached to the eighth sphere, the dark satellite or orb of death, this attraction is brought into force by virtue of their affinity with the realms of elemental being. They have sunk beneath the plane of humanity, and consequently are no longer human. When once they become enclosed within the fatal magnetic whirl of death, they lose the polarity of the feeble atoms which constitute their only being, and gradually dissolve atom by atom like poisonous miasmic mists before the rising sun. The deific atoms themselves are imperishable as ever and enter upon a new cycle of involution and evolution. Thus they are slowly building up new individualities for themselves. Not on this planet, the scene of their failure and suffering, but on a higher plane, in worlds more ethereal than ours. The higher they are placed, the closer they are to the divine. Kether, the first emanation, is the spirit. The elements issued from each other, and the more remote they are from the highest, the more gross they become. Air is the highest and the most subtle element. Earth, condensed water, is the least noble among them. With such a conception, substance is resolved into one principle and brought under one law. The letters partaking of the intelligible and physical world leave their imprint upon all things. They are signs by which we recognize the supreme intelligence in the universe. And through their mediation, the Holy Spirit reveals itself in nature. With letters, God has created the soul of every form in mingling them and combining them in infinite ways. Upon letters, he has established his ineffable and sublime name. Through word and writ, man can penetrate the most hidden divine secrets, and with words and signs, work wonders. The Hebrew letters are grouped into three types. The mother letters, which are Aleph, A, Mem, M, Shin, Sh. The 7 double letters, which have 2 sounds, and the 12 single letters. Aleph is air because the letter is pronounced with a slight aspiration. Mem is water, being mute. Shin is fire because of its hissing sound. 3, 7, and 12 are the numbers with which the world is built. They recur in the 3 realms of nature, in the general composition of the world, in the division of time, in man. Fire is the substance of heaven, water is the substance of earth, air is a mediator between the two, the dominator and also the reconciler, God's breath or word. Fire is summer, water winter, and air spring and fall. For either time or season contains the same number arrangement as man in world. In man, the number 3 is head, heart, and stomach. The 7 double letters are twofold in their essence, their effect being ambivalent, either good or bad. The 7 planets' influence changes according to their position. In the realm of time, 7 are the days and nights of the week. In man, they are the openings of his head, the eyes, the nostrils, the ears, and the mouth. In the universe, there are 12 signs of the zodiac. In time, 12 months of the year. In man, 12 capacities. Sight, smell, speech, hearing, nutrition, generation, touch, locomotion, wrath, laughter, thought, and sleep. Summing up, the material form of intelligence, represented by the 22 letters of the alphabet, is also the form of all that exists. For outside man, time, and the universe, only the infinite is conceivable. Therefore, the 3 realms are called the faithful witnesses of truth. The world of letters and words is built in steps. 1 dominates, 3 governs 7, and 7 is superior to 12, yet each part of the system is inseparable from the others. They are one, although many of their elements are in opposition, arrayed against one another. Finally, above man, above the universe, beyond time, above the letters and numbers is the Spirit, who tolerates no duality or any definition. He is the infinite, yet partaking of everything. But he does not submit to the law which he embodies. He is the law. The closer things and beings are to him, the more they are bathed in his light. Evil is not a separate force, but rather the scarcity or absence of true light. The significance of numbers was developed in a somewhat curious manner, which it may be worthwhile to summarize. 1. In the moral order, a word incarnate in the bosom of a virgin. In the physical order, a spirit embodied in the virgin earth or nature. It is the generative number in the order because the monad supposes the duad, and thence, through the triad, all numbers are evolved. 2. In the moral order, man and woman. In the physical, active and passive, it is the generative number in created things. 3. In the moral order, the 3 theological virtues. In the physical, the 3 principles of bodies. The reference here is to the salt, sulfur, and mercury, thus indicating the Hermetic connections. 3 also denotes the triple divine essence. 4. The 4 cardinal virtues, the 4 elementary qualities, and it is, moreover, the most mysterious of numbers because it contains all the mysteries of nature. 5. The quintessence of religion and the quintessence of matter, which again is alchemical. It is also most occult number because it is enclosed in the center of the series. 6. The theological cube and the physical cube. It is the most salutary number because it contains the source of our spiritual and corporeal happiness. 7. The 7 sacraments and the 7 planets. It is the most fortunate number because it leads us to the decade, the perfect number. 8. The small number of the elect or the wise. It is the most desirable number because he who possesses it is cohort of the sages. 9. The exaltation of matter. It is the most sublime number because nature is exalted. 10. The 10 commandments and the 10 precepts of nature. It is the most perfect number because it includes unity and zero, the symbols of matter and chaos, whence everything emerged. In its figures, it comprehends the created and uncreated, the beginning and end, power and force, life and annihilation. 11. The multiplication of religion and the multiplication of nature. It is the most multiplying number because with the possession of 2 units, we arrive at the multiplication of things, quote unquote. 12. The 12 articles of faith, the 12 apostles in the foundation of the holy city, the 12 operations of nature, the 12 signs of the zodiac, and the foundation of the primum mobile. It is the most solid number, being the basis of our spiritual and corporeal happiness. Hermetic and Kabbalistic philosophies are ascribed to a common source, and this has been the case with sympathetic as well as hostile critics. I am sure that as regards the branch of Hermetic philosophy which is known under the name of alchemy, we should accept this statement. The earlier books ascribed to Hermes Trismegistus, and not concerned with the transmutation of metals, make use of many of the doctrines of the Kabbalah, more or less veiled. The symbol of chemistry is drawn from creation in the eyes of its adepts, who save and purify the divine soul enchained in the elements, and above all, who separate the divine spirit confounded with the flesh. As there is a sun, the flower of fire, a celestial sun, the right eye of the world, so copper, if it become flower by purification, becomes then a terrestrial sun, which is king on the earth, as the sun is king in the sky. There is no doubt that this is a very important citation. It shows why early Hermetic books came to be regarded as alchemical in later times, and it institutes a striking parallel between Egyptian and Jewish science. But the latter is the science of the Kabbalah. But we shall do well to remember that the doctrine of the macrocosm and the microcosm, the analogy between spiritual and material, the Zoroastric symbolism of the balance, have all been traced to the oldest sacred books of the world. The great Hermes Trismegistus used these sacred occult books in his studies of magic and the forces of good and evil. He was one of the few profoundly learned students of occult lore among the ancients. To him we owe much of our knowledge of the dark satellite and its fearful importance.